When I was 15, as a woman, he sat me down and he said, I only need one promise from you. You will never be dependent on anyone for money.
Her journey is a masterclass in resilience, timing, and fearless ambition.
When I actually came, Fintech didn't exist. When we started Souqalmal, there was no VCs available in the country. The financial services industry was packed with advertising, but nobody really understood them.
Before fintech became a buzzword in the region, Ambareen Musa was already building. She built Souqalmal from the ground up, launched CBUAE to tackle financial wellness, and now leads Revolut's charge in the GCC.
My kids do ask me every week, can I get a Revolut card yet? It's coming, it's coming.
Let's get into it. Ambareen, your entrepreneurial journey started at 21 with a platform that helps international students find places to live. Tell me more about what sparked that journey.
I think they always tell you that you get ideas where you find problems. And I think growing up, it was a bit of a similar adventure every time. It was always problem solving at home. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs, so they were constantly solving problems. When I went to Australia, I was 18. And I remember landing there. My parents came with me to get me sorted, to get me a place, because we didn't have a campus. I went to a city university. And we had to stay 10 days at a hotel, which wasn't cheap at the time. We had to stay at a hotel for 10 days. Then we had to go visit all sorts of apartments. So it was quite a friction. And so when I eventually started my degree, within 3 years, I became the president of the International Society, and everybody was going through the same. It wasn't just me. And so as you go through this, you start seeing, hang on, this is not just me. There is a whole lot of people out there having those same issues, trying to find a hotel, trying to find a place to stay, not really knowing whether they were genuine or not. So that's kind of how it came across. It was really just solving a problem of most international students who came particularly to my university. And then when you look around Australia, there were multiple universities that were based out of the city and therefore didn't have boarding.
And given your parents were entrepreneurs, do you think that's why you always had the entrepreneurial bug in you?
I think so. So my grandfather was also an entrepreneur. And if I look at my mom's family, 5 brothers, they were all entrepreneurs. So I think, I'm not sure whether it's a DNA thing. They do tell you there's an argument of whether entrepreneurship, you're born with it or you can become an entrepreneur later. I don't know the answer, but I do know I started making money at the age of 12.
Really?
Yeah. I think I saw my parents both kind of building things on their own, I guess. And at school, I remember a bunch of girls, it was an all-girls school. And, at the age of 12, 13, 14, all the girls started wanting to do their eyebrows. And so I taught myself how to thread. And so I started getting 5 rupees for every eyebrow. I was kind of, how do you call it? Shaping. Yeah. So for every eyebrow I would shape for every girl at school, I was taking 5 rupees as a bit of a black market at school. So it started very early on.
The reason why I'm smiling is it reminds me of myself. So I actually did that with my aunts. They were my target segment. Whatever beauty service I'd give them on Thursdays, a massage maybe. Do you want me to comb your hair? I used to do like ballet classes for my cousins and a show. So
it
relates. Yeah.
And so I look at my kids and they're both in that entrepreneurial bit of a spirit one. But what shocked me is when I was small, I was doing a service. As you can say, I built a beauty service business in quote unquote. My daughter, she came to me and I needed cash. There was Deliveroo who came out and I needed cash to pay for something. And she looked at me, she's like, fine, I'll give you, I've got 75 dirhams in my wallet. I'll give it to you now, but I want 85 back. And I looked at her and I said, wait, you're charging me interest? She's like, yeah, you need money. You don't have money right now. I do. Different types of entrepreneurship.
And you're mostly known as well for your work at Souqalmal. I want to get more into that. It was a digital financial comparison site. Essentially, you built that in 2012 in Dubai. Tell me more about the initial vision and how did that evolve over time as well?
Absolutely. If I go back a little bit of a few years back, I worked at GE Money in the UK and we built the first retail online financial services platform where we would actually sell credit cards online, personal loans and mortgages online. That was in the UK in 2004. So the spirit was already there. That's how I got into retail finance. And one of the biggest channel of acquisition that we used was Money Supermarket. And Money Supermarket at the time was the biggest comparison site for financial products in the UK. So that's kind of how the culture of comparison came on. So I lived and breathed it for quite a while. When I landed in the UAE in 2008, I needed a bank account. And I remember I was working at Bain & Company at the time, and a particular international bank came to the office and said, hey, we bank with Bain. And so here's your bank account. Here is your personal loan if you want one. Here's your credit card if you want one. And I remember sitting in that room going, well, what are the fees and charges? And I was well educated enough in finance to start looking at my options. And the sales guy looked at me and said, well, we work with them already. We've got preferential rates. But I'm like, but I want to know about them. And said, well, you can call out different banks. And then when you're ready, come back. So I went out. What do we do normally? You go online and you look, and there was none. There's not a single comparison site, which to me was shocking. In Australia, it existed. In South Africa, it existed. In the UK, it was normal not to go to your bank directly. The normality or the consumer culture was you compare before you buy. And that's how the idea came in. But I didn't touch it until I went on maternity leave with Dania, who's my first. 6 weeks into having her, I was home, I was on maternity leave, and I didn't have much. I mean, I had the baby, but didn't have much intellectually to figure out. And so I started looking at the idea, and I was like, maybe someone has done it, maybe someone, and it was a couple of years later after the first idea came through, and no one had done it. And that's why I thought, well, I'm on maternity leave. I'm getting paid. Why not launch myself? I'll try it out. I'll get a company to do something. Let me test out the market. And within 6 months of launching, when I had to go back to work post-maternity leave, I had already raised a round of funding. And it was in the newspaper and so you could see the traction. And I had 4,000 people already who had filled in a little survey I had on the site. So it started really small without really the intention of it blowing up. But when I saw the traction, I thought, well, I think it's probably worth giving it a go.
And it definitely did blow up. I think there's a huge demand for a product like that, given that in our region, there's not much transparency. And people now are a lot more educated and informed, and they want to know the exact differences in rates and whatnot. You eventually ended up it got acquired, Souqalmal. Tell me more about why you decided to sell that business.
There is a code that tells you always sell when you have a buyer and don't wait when you want to sell. Another friend of mine who is a founder of one of the big exits in the country said to me, do sell a couple of years before you believe personally it's time for this to end from a personal perspective, right? At some point, people burn out, or it's been a great journey, but you're ready to move on to something else. I sold because there was a buyer. And I remember the quote thinking, if I don't sell now, I don't know when the exit will come through. That number one. And two is, remember we had raised funding, and when you raise funding and you've got investors at the back of you, they all expect a return at some point. That is a responsibility I had towards my shareholders. So there had to be an exit at some point. It was an amazing journey. It was an incredible journey. The 10 years of Souqalmal, I think, brought me not only on a personal level, a personal growth that I couldn't get from anywhere else, but building a network and really giving. I looked at it as giving back to the community, because when I actually came, Fintech didn't exist. When we started Souqalmal, there was no VCs available in the country. The financial services industry was packed with advertising, but nobody really understood them. And having the background of retail finance, but also I had built the first financial education platform back in the UK with the government as part of the GE Money initiative to give back to the community. I am a passionate of people understanding the money. It is so easy to get scammed when it comes to money, because money is not just a tool. There is emotion attached. If you go back to when you were a child, your relationship of money, there is a such thing called a money trauma. So your relationship with money is also based a lot on your childhood. It's based on, how do you perceive money? Is it a shame? Is it a tool that just, it's like air, you need it because you need to live? Or is it a status-driven thing? So there's so many aspects psychologically that surrounds our management of money. I find it extremely fascinating, but I also find that we are extremely, extremely poorly educated about money. And when you go back into schools, it's obvious. There is nothing called financial education at school. In our generation, talking about money was taboo, right? Today, what I try to do is I try to open the Excel sheet to the kids and I say, this is our cost of living. This is how much the income is. As you can see, there has to be part of it that goes into saving. There has to be part of it that goes into investment. That level of education, I wish we were taught. I learned it much later on in life, put it into practice. I'm lucky to have a brother who's a banker, so he helped me quite a bit. But the trigger to me was when I came to the UAE, I got a car loan from one of the banks, and I was told my rate was 1.99. So I jumped on it, and I thought, why not? I was getting a fixed deposit of higher than 1.99, so I put the money there and get the funds and then take the loan. The first 3 months, I looked at my outgoings and I thought, but if I count 1.99, that doesn't make sense. An Excel sheet doesn't lie. You just go in and you put the formula. And I couldn't figure it out. So I called the bank, and nobody at that bank could explain to me, why are you charging me more on a monthly basis than what I had calculated my outgoings would be? Nobody could. 3 months. And finally, somebody, it was an international bank, somebody from abroad called me and said, Miss Musa, I hear you having a problem or concerns about your loan with us. I'm like, absolutely. You're overcharging me. And that's when he said to me, have you heard of that you're on a flat rate? I was like, what is a flat rate? And so in the Middle East or the UAE, there was two concepts, a flat rate and reducing rate. Very simple concept. A flat rate is a rate of interest on the amount that you borrowed for the length of the loan. So if I borrowed 100,000, it's going to be, no matter how much I've paid down, they still charge it on 100,000. This is why the rate looks small. But if you convert it to a reducing rate, which means you only pay on the amount you've got left, the rate is a bit higher. So the 1.99 had been converted to 4% finally. And that shocked me. And I remember thinking, if I do not understand this, can you imagine the rest of the population? And that was all the trigger of setting up Souqalmal. And that's how the whole financial education section got attached.
It's definitely a topic I could go on and on and on about. I'm very passionate about it because I feel like the financial industry as well complicates things, so that it's in their advantage that the rest of the people don't ask questions or don't know what's going on. And then we need to change that. I think now with the younger generation, I do see that there's a lot more awareness within schools, within universities. I just hope this is taken a lot more seriously. The first time someone should manage their money is not when their first paycheck is. That's too late by then. So I love all the work that you put into this. And if you look back at your own journey, what were the biggest maybe lessons that you had, maybe with Souqalmal or with Yebbi that came after that as well? Maybe some mistakes that you had maybe as a founder?
Oh gosh, the mistakes I don't have enough fingers to count them. Loads of mistakes. I think if from hiring the wrong people, to doing deals or trusting people I shouldn't have. The mistakes kind of, I can go on and on for hours on it. But I think one of the biggest learnings to me was the choice of investors and how important your team was. These are the two learnings for me. I think when you hire a team, the most important part is attitude. I can teach anybody really anything, right? Even math, you can get a tutor and you can teach. You can be naturally a little bit more inclined to be very good at math or very good at customer experience. You can pick up if you're smart. If you have the smartness with you, you can learn anything. What I cannot teach is attitude. I cannot teach passion. I cannot teach go-getter attitude. I cannot teach people to be a self-starter. That comes from ingrained. That is, and I think one of the mistakes I used to do when I was used to hire is I would get taken away by the sales pitch. And when you're an entrepreneur, you want things to happen so fast. You don't want to go through a process of 4 months to hire someone. When actually, you really should, right? You really should hire slow and fire fast is what they say. Because once someone is not working out, and very often I say, not working out in a company doesn't mean the candidate is not good. It just, the fit is not there. And that's all it is. So when people look for jobs, they should just be looking at places that fits them. Some people need flexibility. Some people need jobs that are 9 to 5. Whatever makes you happy. But it's the wrong combination of environment and the person talent that actually doesn't work. So I think one of the biggest learning experience is do a lot more due dil on attitude and on the person's reason to join, especially a startup. It's a very different place. It's not at all a corporate job, and things happen really fast. And my expectations are extremely high, right? I think one of the biggest learning is really take your time to hire. The other big learning for me was, who do you have on board? I know it's so easy to just say, you want $1 million? Yes, I need money. I am desperate for money because I'm running out of cash in 3 months. The investors you bring on board, you're getting married. This is not, once you take people's money, you're responsible. They have the right to know what you're doing. They're trusting you. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget the trust that people are putting in you when they give you money. And I think that trust comes with a lot of responsibility, that no paperwork, no signatures, no contracts, no terms that you take 6 months to negotiate can support. The trust is much more of an intangible way of, or an intangible relationship that you can build with your investors. And it has to go 2 ways. You need to be able to trust that investor without looking at this paperwork, and they should be able to trust you without looking at the paperwork. One of my first lawyers ever gave me the most amazing advice and say, that paperwork that you've taken 6 months to negotiate will go in a drawer. When will it come out? When that trust is broken. That's when you go to pick up that paper. So just be very careful what you negotiate for. The other thing I learned was, when you are choosing the investors, one is the right investor is absolutely key to make or break your business. And that are people who are going to support you. Not necessarily people who want to be operationally involved unless you really need them to. It's best that they play an advisory role. But their role of an investor is really corporate governance and also to opening doors in this region. And so the money you take, don't just take any money. And for you not to have to take any money that comes along, it's for you to become profitable ASAP. If you don't need money, you have choice. You have choice to wait. You have choice. You have the choice. Freedom of choice. And I teach this a lot to my kids. Freedom of choice is the only freedom you can really go after. And freedom of choice can be freedom of fundraising. I have the choice to fundraise or not. I have the choice of being with a particular investor or not. I have the choice of growing and scaling up or not. And I have the choice of who I want to have as a part of my team. And that freedom of choice is, to me, the only freedom I really need.
And you can only have that control once you have that strong foundation. I'd love to finally get into your actual current role right now at Revolut. Tell me more about what excites you the most about leading Revolut's charge in GCC.
I do love my job, and I didn't think I would say that because it's not my own, but I do. So last year when I completed my 2 years with Yabi, because after the sale of Souqalmal, I did Yabi for 2 years, a financial education platform, and I finished this role in April 2022, and my plan was to take a break. It's been 10 years. It's been 12 years by then. And before that, I had worked for 10 years. So I thought maybe it's time to take a break. And my kids grew up with Souqalmal because I was on maternity with my first one. In 2014, my second one was born. So they used to come to the office every other week. They grew up with Souqalmal. I remember at some point, my daughter said, wait, if you sell the company, she was young, does that mean they take all your awards away? It was the cutest thing ever. And I was like, no, the award's already given. They're not going anywhere. But it was interesting how to see their mindset. And a couple of weeks after I was done with Yabi, Revolut called in the spirit of looking for a UAE CEO. And the first time it was, I don't think I have the energy to go through, and I really need a break. And I didn't want to get into something straight away, just because in my mind, it was always take a break and then think through for 6 months what you want to do next. Within 3 months of talking to them, it was impossible to say no. It was, by the time I reached and spoke to our founder and our CEO, Nick, his vision was so big and so exciting. And funny enough, I've been there for a year and I can see that part of that vision is already there and it's already been implemented. But the way he sold and he's planning to grow this business is something I've never seen before. His passion for the business was something I haven't seen before. But I think what really struck with me was I've been talking about transparency for years. I've been talking about the right customer experience with banks for so long. I've been talking about how things need to be much easier, much cheaper. I've been talking about how safety, and in the last 2 years, the level of scams in this region has been astronomical. I've been talking about how to help people. Just be careful when you do transfers. Be careful before you give your OTPs out. Be careful when somebody calls you and say, hey, I'm from this bank, we need your ID, or can you complete your IBAN? I don't know if you've heard about this scam, but there was one scam where they would call you and they would give you the first 6 digits of your IBAN and ask you, the first 8 digits of your IBAN and ask you to complete the last 6. Most people would think, oh, if you know the first 8 digits, then you must be genuine.
Yeah.
The first 8 digits are totally generic. It represents your bank and the branch code. Yeah. So your account number is what they need, and the last 6 digits are your account number, right? But without a level of education, we don't know that.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you'd have calls coming in. The police would call you and say, I've sent you a code. It's a Dubai police. Dubai police doesn't call you. The central bank wouldn't call you. There's another scam where people would call and say, we're the central bank, we're going to close your account. Now, because we're expats in this country, when somebody hears something around, we're going to freeze your account if you don't give us the OTP and you don't give us your Emirates ID, most people panic because they are not home.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a place they were born and brought up with. It's not a place where they understand the financial ecosystem as well. They get scared, and they do. The central bank would never do that.
And the scammers are getting a lot more sophisticated as well, cloning voices with AI and all of that. So
that is very scary, right? Where they've seen scams where somebody calls you, your mom calls you and say, I really need money, can you transfer? And people would. And the voice was not the grandmother, the voice was AI. So there's a whole lot of scams, and it's building up more and more. Look, it's very normal. As our technology gets better into solving problems, there are problems. It's almost like the healthcare industry. As we find cures for diseases, you've got diseases we never knew about. That gets up. And it's going to be like this. So they're always going to be a step ahead, right? So you've got to be very vigilant. And I think one of the areas I love about the Revolut product and what we're building and constantly building. Remember, we've got 60 million customer base. The level of data we can turn to understand behavior, but more importantly, to understand how fraud is happening and what you can do and how you can use all of this data and these learnings across globally and refining our product over and over again. That scale, you won't find that in many places. And to me, it's that constant learning attitude and innovative attitude that consistently comes back in the business. I think we build products. I can't even tell you how many products we build every single month. But the spirit is we build. If it doesn't work, we kick it out. But we continue building, and it's okay if it fails.
And congratulations. I mean, at the time that we're taping now, you guys just got your in-principle approval.
We did.
From the central bank in the UAE.
Absolutely, we did. So it's exciting. It's been some time coming, so we're very excited, and we're working very closely with central bank. Now, this is an in-principle approval, and what it means is there are requirements that we need to follow through now to actually be able to get the full license. When you get the in-principle approval, this is where you kick off the build of the product, the localization, and we make sure that we fit all the criteria that the central bank puts forward to us so that we can get the full license and eventually become operational.
Nice. Any timelines?
Not timelines soon. Having said that, we're working to make it as soon as possible and as fast as possible. I've been getting so many messages of when can I open an account? And my answer is I don't even have an account. I'm looking forward to it. My kids do ask me every week, can I get a Revolut card yet? It's coming. But as soon as we can announce it, we will. We just need to make sure that we're following through every single requirement.
And what's the plan for the GCC? How are you guys using UAE as a launchpad to the rest of the GCC countries?
So the UAE market, the dynamics is phenomenal, right? It is for sure one of the global financial hub. I think the UAE is extremely interesting market. Young population, digital adoption is fantastic. But if you look at the region, it's very interesting for us for similar reasons. You look at Saudi Arabia, it's a similar story. You've got 75% of the population is less than 30. Digital option is extremely strong. The infrastructure is very strong. The regulatory framework is pretty strong. So these are the markets that we really, really love looking into. Now, as I was saying, at this point of time, the team is looking at each of the GCC markets and really doing a full analysis on regulatory environment, adoption of customer base, competitive landscape, to understand whether this market, do we have a market product fit to start with? And if we do, and the regulatory environment allows us to do so, that's how we then start setting up shop in this particular market. But GCC in the Middle East is definitely on the radar.
Nice. You talked about product market fit. I want to just dive into that a bit more. There's a lot of products in the market, a lot of other players and a lot of competitors. We have Leo Bank, for example, here, or Mashraq Neo. How are you guys planning to stand out? Because I think in terms of products, there's a lot in the market, but I also believe people are underserved.
Absolutely. I think, look, there I do lots of products. You can also ask me whether I prefer McDonald's or Burger King. There are two burgers. So the way I respond to this question, or the way I think about this question, there is a product for everyone, right? There is no one bank or one payments company or one burger for everybody.
Yeah.
It's really about your preference, right? Some people prefer Sharia compliant products. Some people prefer having a face-to-face interaction with their bank. Some people prefer, I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to go through it. Some people, I actually don't need international transfers. I live here. My kids are here. Everybody's here. I don't need to send money abroad. So all these features about international transfers doesn't get to me. So I think there is a product for everybody rather than which one is better and which one is not. It's more of a customer product fit. But what I can tell you is the reason I got excited with Revolut is the seamless experience that we can provide between our different way of managing your money, between doing the transfers, between being able to give your kids an account and actually transfer money to your kids. It is extremely easy and it is extremely seamless. And the other point to me is all the technology we're putting in terms of anti-fraud, in terms of security. How do we make the customer feel secure when they're transferring their money through, all the technology we're putting in, from AI to all the data we churn, to make sure that the customer, when they're making that transfer, they do feel confident. And if they don't, we do have a way to actually get them to delay send, for them to think through properly if they really want to send that transfer or not. We've got a feature which is a Face ID feature to make sure that it is you at this point. It's not someone else somewhere else making the transfer, but it is you who's actually made that transfer. So I think on those types, I love the product. The multi-currency feature I love it. I can go anywhere. I don't use it yet, but I've got friends who've got a Revolut account in the UK and I love it. When I travel with them, it's just Revolut everywhere because it's easy. But also the fees are very reasonable, right? So I think...
And transparent.
And my goal in the UAE when we launch is to be absolutely transparent into what we do.
But I'm curious to know, what's your relationship with money like?
So nobody has ever asked me this question, but I did ask myself the question probably around 8-9 years ago. Actually, when I started Yabi, it even became even stronger, right? I grew up in a very humble family. We didn't lack of anything, but there was no show off either. So it was very humble. And we were always, one of the two learnings my dad particularly gave me. He was an entrepreneur. He's built 4 businesses. And the last one he sold. My dad at 15 put me aside. We were 3 of us, 2 boys and me. The boys, I remember, the only thing they heard was financial stability. You need to have a job because I think my dad went through the entrepreneurship and it was so hard. He mostly drove us into professionalism versus entrepreneurship, right? But 2 out of 3 became entrepreneurs. The older one became a banker because of financial stability and the way we grew up. And he pushed at her. But when I was 15, as a woman, he sat me down and he said, I only need one promise from you. You will never be dependent on anyone for money. And I looked at him and I said, why do you think I would be? He said, I don't want you to be dependent on your brothers. I don't want you to be dependent on me because I don't know how long I'll be around. And I don't want you to be dependent on your husband if you decide to get married one day. I need you, no matter what you do, I don't care. But please have your own funds, have your own money, because that will allow you to have choice. And I carried this forever. And I wonder whether kind of that's what shaped me. But the other learning, and at that I was pretty small. I remember, our friends and family had BMWs and had nice cars. And we had a normal car, good enough. And I remember telling the dad, all 3 of us sat at the dinner table, we were young, and he said, Dad, why are you driving this car? Can we just not buy a BMW like the uncle or the cousins? And my dad looked at us and said, does the car we have bring you to school every morning? Yeah. Does it bring you from A to B? Yeah, but that's not the point. They're like, no, that is the point. If it's bringing you from A to B, then it's doing its job. I'm not a car fanatic. I don't have any love for cars. It's doing the job. And then he said, and by the way, if you guys don't understand, is that money is going to your education, right? So instead of buying the BMW for today, I would rather save it and invest in your future, which will ensure your wealth at some point. These are the two things I would carry with me forever, I think.
Wow.
So my learning or my relationship with money has always been, it's a tool. It's very easy to spend it, but it's not that easy to make it and make it work for you, right? And that's the education I bring to my kids. That it's so easy to spend the credit card. And at the time, credit cards in our family anyway was not highly used. And I remember my father, the first credit card he had, flipped, because in his head, if anybody took his card and used it, that was it. And as I grew much older and I could understand the life of credit cards, I said, Dad, the bank, it's okay. Don't be that obsessed. If there is a fraud, if you tell the bank immediately, you're covered. So don't stress. But he couldn't, right? His generation, for him, it was almost a generation that they needed the cash to be somewhere. So I grew up being very careful with how we spend, but also looking at things like cars as not as assets, but as expenses. So we were taught how you need to make your money work for you. And at some point become free of having to work to make that money. And, you know, when I look at what my dad achieved, for 25 years, he wasn't working, neither my mom. So he retired 25 years ago. And for the whole time that he retired, he had built enough capital to run his life. When I look at this, which meant...
That's real success.
That, you know what, that was real success, because it did not, he was fully independent from his kids. And he didn't need us. Now, not everybody is as lucky, and I totally understand that. But when I saw this, it gave me the learnings. I do want to do something similar. I do want to be independent from anyone and have the freedom of choice where I want to live, how I want to spend my money. And I think it starts really early.
I'm really enjoying this conversation, but we do have to wrap it up at some point in time. So let me wrap it up with one of our favorite questions. If you were 21 today, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, wow. That was a long time ago.
Like 5 years ago?
I like you already. I think the advice I would give myself at 21 would be, actually, there is one. When I was between 20 and 35 or so, I used to take things very much at heart. Everything was very personal. My job became very personal, and I would be so passionate about this that I became very intolerant, right? And actually, there was a lady called Najla. She was the CMO of GE at the time. I was 24 or so when I was building the GE Money Bank in the UK. And I remember she came to me and she said, "You're like a light bulb, but you're at 120 all the time. Not everybody else is. And you need to learn how to adapt to others around you. I know you are like a speedboat and the wake can wet everybody around you and you don't care. You're just going forward." And I wish I'd learned this a little bit earlier in terms of take a chill pill, right? It's okay to go at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but bring people with you. Because if you run that fast alone, well, you will end up alone. And nobody can build a business alone. Nobody can do many things. You need a team to build something. And I wish I'd known that a bit earlier. I learned this, I think, probably halfway through Souqalmal, where I do need to bring people with me and not run on my own. And asking for help is never a bad thing, right? And I think the ability to ask for help is probably one of the biggest skills I've learned throughout the time being an entrepreneur, because at some point you burn out. At some point you have your back to the wall, and the only way to get out is to ask for help.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.